Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Tanner's Favorite Things. I am Tanner Knight, and today I thought we'd try something a little bit different here. So I think that the website Reddit is a really great resource and a great option for entertainment, information, confessions, you name it. My wife Gabby absolutely loves Reddit, and this was actually her suggestion. So if you like this video, you have Gabby to thank for that. So otherwise, what we want to do here is take a look at a few different pages in Reddit. And for those of you who don't know what Reddit is, it's a website, and it's basically a place for anyone to go post things anonymously, to respond to those posts also anonymously. I mean, you can put your name in your handle if you'd like, but most people keep it pretty anonymous. But people come here all the time and just pose questions or show you pictures. And in this case, we've got kind of a mishmash of one of my favorite brands called Peavey. So for this page, I just typed in Peavey under search Reddit, and it came up with all of these entries. And you can see there, some of them are newer than others, 2 months, 1 year, 3 months, 1 year, etc. But I thought it would be cool to go through here and take a look at some of the old Peavey stuff that people are posting on Reddit, what is being said about it, maybe learn something, and who knows, maybe find some cool gear. So let's just click on this, and in fact, you can sort this by all time, past year, blah, 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 blah. I'm just gonna leave it all time as the sorting, and we'll click into this Vintage Peavey speakers first option here. So this is in the Peavey cult right here, that's pretty cool. Additional mess 9145 posted this. So the post is Vintage Peavey speakers. Had this given to me by an old man who runs a church. When I found the speakers, they were outside. The box was dirty and the speakers discolored, but they all worked and sounded great. I've had them for a few months now, and when cleaning the garage, something fell on one and ripped a hole through the cone and destroyed the dust cap. Oh, bummer. The speaker still works, but would need to be restored as well with the rest of them if you wanted them to match. My main question is, are they worth anything? So let's take a look at our pictures here. So this is one great thing about Reddit. They let you post pictures. And just by looking at this cabinet, that's pretty funny. I used to have this exact cabinet based on these handles and how the grill is affixed to the front. This is just a standard Peavey 4x12 cab from probably the late 70s, early 80s. We'll have to see what the speaker says, but these are typically going to be Eminence loaded speakers. This is before the era of the Scorpion speaker. So later on, you'll see Scorpions loaded in these, but you know, in the early days, they were typically Eminence. These are the 4 speakers. Can't see where the one got destroyed. Maybe that happened after he took these pictures. And here we go, made in USA, Peavey sound equipment. It's got the square style of magnet on these speaker drivers, and it's got a little code here, with this being the more important code, 67-7524. So that's stating that this is in fact an Eminence speaker built in the Eminence factory, I believe in Kentucky. And I think this might be the date code. So these might be 1975 speakers. They kind of get a little fuzzy in the early days of Peavey, but that's probably what we're looking at here. Let's see what the commenters say. Those are old Eminence speakers. They pop up in loads of vintage cabs. My guess is they were an affordable workhorse option for companies when they didn't want to sell out for JBLs, EVs, etc. I personally like them. They aren't the best sounding speaker out of there, but they get the job done. The Peavey sticker was just slapped on when the cab was built, since Peavey never made their own speakers, as far as I know. That's not true. I'm pretty sure Peavey did make the Scorpion and later Black Widow speakers. I'll have to verify that, but it was pretty common to do this with speakers and tubes as well. You'll see tubes and speakers with Fender, Peavey, Ampeg, etc. printed on them, despite those companies not having actually produced the parts. As far as value, they aren't worth much, especially the broken one, maybe 30 to 50 bucks a piece, but they are not collectible or really desirable. So yeah, to answer his question about what are they worth, they're probably 30 to 50 bucks a piece. They're not very valuable speakers. The cabinet, I would say, is probably worth 200 to 250 bucks because it is solid birch plywood and it's thick. It's really a beefy, just bomb-proof cab. So if you don't like these speakers, you could always swap them out. And in fact, I swapped my speakers out for Celestion, I want to say G12 T75s when I had this cabinet. So pretty stock standard Celestion speakers, and they upgraded the sound tremendously. Okay, so 67 code Maximum Eminence. There you go. They're cool. Oh, here you go, 24th week of 1975. So that was, in fact, a date code stating that these are from 1975, at least according to Sideshow Bob Ross. Are they worth anything? 20 bucks a piece. Yep, that's probably about right. So there you go. There's post number 1. We're just looking at a cabinet. This one, I've already taken a look at this one because I was really intrigued by it. But today's reading material, Vintage Peavey catalogs. So these are paper catalogs that were distributed by Peavey, but it says G. Foley, blah, 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 Pennsylvania. So on the cover, we have one of the Peavey bass amps and rigs. Looks like a 2x15 cab with that, I think that's the 300 amp. And then we have the Mace. This is a Peavey tube amp, which I believe came in a single 12 and a 2x12 configuration. This appears to be the bigger 2x12 with a T60 in front of it. Let's take a look. The world of Peavey. So we got some pictures of what looks like the Peavey factory in black and white. That I believe is Hartley Peavey, or yep, that's Hartley right there. He's got a little blurb. He's the founder of Peavey. We got a little page about the tube amps, such as the Deuce. Can't say what that says. We have the Mace and the Classic. Those are tube amps. The Classic, I believe, has a solid state preamp, but otherwise tube power amp. Guitar enclosures, got a whole page about configurations of speakers and cabs. That's kind of cool. So that's it for this one. We got a few more of these that we'll dive into, but we'll take a look at these comments. I know a lot of people like those T60s, but they had to be the heaviest, clunkiest guitars I've ever played. True, they are boat anchors. I like this. 149 pounds for a 1x15 cabs. Did they line it with lead? So you come here for laughs, for information, etc., etc. I'd like to put my order in for a Mace head and 2 4x12 cabs at that price. Yeah, sure. So you got some, oh, here we go. That's back in the day, Peavey was the low-end consumer brand. We had Peavey and Carbon tube amps because they were dirt cheap. That's not correct. Here we go. We got a little contention. They were a mainstay of American country and southern rock acts throughout the mid-70s and 80s, and they fell off. But Hartley's vision was American-made touring gear for pros. So there you go. Little love for Peavey. Help foot switch for Vintage Peavey. We don't need to take a look at that. But let's take a look at this person's latest pickup. Who else is loving vintage Peavey gear? So this is the TNT 100 bass amp. I actually owned this amp too, but a later version, kind of a 90s or early 2000s version. This is clearly late 70s, early 80s based on the font and everything, and the silver drip. That's one of their first designs. So this is a big old solid state bass amp and a single 15, probably an Eminence speaker in there if I had to guess. No other pictures though, so that's it. Here you go. Hell yeah, I do. Nice one. Someone else had this. I just made 100 TNT 45 watt into my practice amp. Needed it louder, swapped the 300, blah, blah, blah. So there you go. Little information, little love on the Peavey TNT 100. Okay, here's another couple pages of this catalog. Let's take a look. We've got the same first two and then Peavey. Here we go. This is the Century 120 bass series. So this is a really popular solid state bass amp for rock, country, even some metal, but you can see all of this Peavey crap on the stage. It looks awesome. Got a bass kick without any reso head. Same here. We got just concert toms. So that's how people did it back in the 70s. Cool. More bass stuff. Just the head and Phil Upchurch. There you go. He's rocking his Peavey musician amp, looks like. So cool stuff there. Roadmaster F800B, F800G. These are just different variants of their bass rigs. And then we get into the guitar and basses, or there's only these 2 pages, looks like, because that's where it ends. But we do have the fabled T60. This guitar is all maple with a maple neck, and sometimes it has a rosewood fretboard like you see here. Other times it will have a maple fretboard like the T40 bass. The T40 bass is their equivalent of the T60. It's their flagship bass, just really badass, great electronics, heavy, 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 just rock solid. Next, over on this page, we do have the smaller T15 guitar. This is a 23 and something inch scale length, probably 23 and an eighth inch scale length, so slightly shorter than the T60, which I believe has a standard 25 and a half inch scale length. This electric case is also very iconic for Peavey. It's a roto-molded case that comes with a built-in amp for your T15. So everything you need to rock and roll, minus the wall power, you got to plug it in. But once you plug it in, you're good to go with these items right here. So that's pretty cool. Mr. This Sold Thing says, I've said it 100 times, but I'll say it again. If Peavey made a car, I'd drive it. Yeah, it would probably be about 6,000 pounds, but there you go. Peavey's underrated company. They were cranking out really great stuff. Yeah, a lot of Peavey love over here. Pretty cool. All right, we do have another today's reading material. This is another catalog, which again has the same few first pages, bass. If we scroll over here, you can see we actually do get the Black Widow superstructure speaker. So they were loading these with Peavey Black Widows back whenever this catalog was being made. So that's an additional page here after the guitars and basses. All right, here's a post. Found this old Peavey Decade. Any idea what it's worth? So the Peavey Decade has really achieved legendary status in kind of the last 10 years or so. It came out in like an interview or video that Josh Fromm of Queens of the Stone Age used this particular little dumb amp for his searing lead tones. So the market on these kind of just went crazy. And just for kicks, let's go ahead and go to Reverb real quick and check out the Peavey Decade. This is a 10 watt 1x8 amplifier, and 200 is the lowest. Here we go, 800, 500, 500. This is not worth this much. I promise you that this little amp is not worth more than a Peavey tube amp, such as the Peavey Encore 65, or even the Peavey Bandit 65, which you can pick up for around 200 bucks. So why is this amp going for so much? It's because Josh Fromm really called this thing out, and people thought it was the answer to their tone questions, and there you go. So what is it worth? You could probably sell it for about 150 bucks realistically. I think you need to find the right buyer, and even at that price, it's still not worth comparative amps. So maybe you find a Queen of the Stone Age fan and you can jack up the price from there. But this amp was basically a $30 amp until 2 months ago. Well, there you go, 3 years. Queens of the Stone Age announced that they used it on their first album. Now they're going over 300. So there's that exact story. I have a feeling they're easy to find in the wild, so the prices should settle eventually. Well, they haven't. That was 3 years ago. Let this be a lesson to all. Price equals sounding good. It was 20 to 40 all day last year, and no one wanted them. Then a popular player says they use them. So there you go. Thanks to Josh Holm. All of this whole thing is just totally bashing on the fact that they're now going for 700. It's a mini Bandit, tons of fun. Basically a solid state Fender amp, Fender Champ. Wind it up and let it rip. About treat fitty. eBay and Reverb, blah blah blah. So this is just answering. I will trade you 4 tacos or 3 beers for that classic. So let's see what he ended up getting for it. A bit late, but I sold it for $400 on Reverb. Was pretty pumped that I got that much, considering it almost sold on Facebook for 50 bucks. So there you go. This exact amp sold for $400 to some ridiculous Queens of the Stone Age fan that's trying to chase their Josh Holm tone. I don't suggest you do that. You can get that with a pedal or some other amp, but that's a cool one. That Peavey Decade has really been an interesting story over the last 3 years. So I guess my 10-year timeline is a bit wrong, but 10 years feels like 3 years, feels like 10 minutes. Okay, most underrated Peavey of all time. I like what I'm seeing here. This is the Stereo Chorus 400, which is a solid state amplifier, 100% I believe. We'll hopefully get some verification here in a second, but looks like we got some sort of Firebird with some toaster style pickups, not the mini humbuckers or Firebird specific pickups that are that size. But we do have a bound rosewood fretboard with the block inlaid, so that's potentially a Gibson product. It's heavily relict, flame maple. Doesn't look like a Gibson paint job by any means, but we're not here for that. It looks like the other guitar is just a straight up black Strat with a rosewood fretboard, and they are going into a Peavey Chorus 400 with a fractal or some sort of, I'm not as familiar with these digital modeling units, so maybe someone can tell me what that is, but we got a pretty nice selection of pedals otherwise, the SD1 overdrive, Super Overdrive and the Blues Driver, two great Boss pedals, and I don't know what these little fruity ones are, but they're probably cool too. So let's see if we got any more pictures. Doesn't look like it. So what do our comments say? I have the head version and it's a monster. I hope people keep sleeping on Peavey so I can get amps for 200 all day. Maybe I'm doing a disservice by having this up here. But anyway, nice amp that brings back the memories. Wish I'd gotten one of those, but instead I had an 80s Peavey Heritage 2x12, 130 watts tube power amp with solid state preamp. Kind of backwards, built-in phaser, blah, blah, blah. Solid state pre into power, tube power, yeah. So basically Music Man HD 130 with phaser, pretty much. This guy says, I can't believe that I didn't know this amp existed until a few days ago. It's like a JC 120 by Roland, but with twice as much power, arguably better speakers, a much more effective EQ, and it's dirt cheap. Absolutely nuts to me that these are so slept on. Might add, this is probably the best pedal amp I've ever played on. Yeah, that's what they are, high headroom country slingers. I was looking at getting one of these, but a dual 212, 120 tube combo came up for 250. Yeah, those all good options. Bandit 65, Special 130 should also be on the list. Yep, great choices. Butcher VTM, those are two of the pre-5150 PV tube amps. And so we commented on the Firebird, looks cool, love the toaster pickups. If Peavey made a truck, I'd drive it. That sounds like a different guy too. So there you go, the Peavey Stereo Chorus 400, and I do believe that's 400 watts of power, so that's pretty freaking crazy. What do we got here? ID Vintage Peavey from a crappy photo, please. It looks like an early 80s, late 70s. Yeah, backstage 30, a small, probably 10-inch little combo amp. So backstage 30. Let's take a look at this one. Does anyone know anything about these old Peavey speakers? This is a Peavey cabinet with the silver drip edge. So again, we're looking at late 70s into the early 80s. We have Scorpion speakers. They're pretty identifiable based on this silverish gray outline that is not circular. It's got these 4 flat spaces. That's a Scorpion or potentially a Black Widow, but I think it's probably a Scorpion. Let's see what the comment says. I saw this pop up on Marketplace. I'm a big fan of Peavey, but I don't know about these more vintage looking models. I have an orange OR15 head that I'm trying a cabinet for. This would be great for that. I play a lot of lower tuned, high gain stuff. Slipknot, Limp Bizkit, Korn. Are these speakers any good for that? No, these are not good speakers for that. The Scorpions are pretty crappy for anything high gain. They're great for high headroom stuff like the steel guitar stuff or countries, but when you put a high gain amplifier through them, they sound like utter crap. The Black Widows are a bit better. They can handle a bit more juice, but they are not good. Those are Scorpions and they can do it. The suckers are really easy to recone too. I have a 4x12 and it rocks the growl. So maybe some people can make these work, but I have had terrible experience trying to make the Scorpions sound good with a high gain situation. I picked up a 4x12 flight case for $100 with the Scorpions. Absolutely loving it. Won't gig with it, but great for practice. They're Scorpions. Cab is from '84 based on the nameplate, so there you go. They were wicked speakers, less high end than most of the speakers, but thick mids and low ends. Great speaker for high gain stuff. I disagree, but there you go. I have a 1x18 from the same era. That's huge. Sounds sick. Maybe that sounds cool. The OR15 is a 16 ohm output. Looks a little to be 4. Buyer beware, don't fry your OT. Scorpions are straight, tough and straightforward. Like people are saying, it has scorpions, are good mid response. They don't get too crispy on the highs. If you're using a super high fidelity top end, then it might let you down a bit, but in a band mix, it will sound massive. This will weigh a ton, small chance. It has eminent speakers in it, but those are a little flatter EQ. No, those are definitely scorpions. You just can't mistake a scorpion once you see them over and over again. But there you go, a little bit of Peavey cabinet that we dug into a little bit. I wish we had some pictures of the interior, but they're kind of a pain to get at because they are front loaded. You can actually see the screws right here. Those are the bolts that hold these in the front. So it makes it kind of nice to swap speakers out, pretty easy that way. You just remove the grill and then swap the speakers out without having to get into the back. But it makes it a little harder to just take a look inside. So there you go. That's the Peavey guitar amps. We might take a little more look at something down the line here, but I also wanted to take a look at another thread, Vintage Tama. And this is one that's kind of close to my heart. I love the vintage Tama stuff, the Superstars, the Imperial Stars. These are drum sets, by the way. If you're not a drummer, I apologize. I tend to spend most of my time in the drum set these days, but I love guitar-based drums, keyboards, you name it. So let's take a look at the Tama Vintage and see what folks are talking about here. I brought my first kit back to life. Vintage Tama Rockstar. So if you haven't taken a look at the video that I created a couple weeks ago about the history of Tama, it's actually a two-part series where I dive deep into the history of Star drums, which then later becomes Tama in 1974, and all the way up till 1990. I'll complete that series here shortly, but if you haven't checked that out, I'll link it in the comments below. Let's take a look at this guy's set though real quick. These are Rockstars. I believe they're Rockstar Pros as well with the yellow wrap. I could be wrong about that. They had a lot of weird variants back in the day, but look at this big ass vinyl symbol here. That's probably a 24-inch unless there's some optical illusion stuff going on here. One thing I don't think is correct are these hoops. I could be wrong, but I don't think the Rockstars had blonde hoops. I think they were metal hoops. But I love the Art Deco style of these lugs and everything else about the look of these drums. They're just great. The late 80s, early 90s, great era for Tama Japan. So unfortunately, we don't have any more pictures, but we do have, let's see, one big old tom over here. So that's probably a 14, probably a, would that be a 6 or an 8? This is an 8 or a 10, and probably a 10 or a 12. And then 16 and 18, or maybe 18 and 18. This looks like a big old chunky boy up front. So probably two 18s or maybe a 16 and 18. And what looks like an Artwood snare, the piccolo snare in there. That's cool. So this is a really cool set. Vintage Tama hardware, really looks rock solid. And the color, vibrant, love it. Let's see what the people are saying. What's with the tom placement? They go from small to the rack and then the floor tom. So yeah, he's got kind of a reverse order of toms. I wonder if he's left-handed or something like that. Interesting. A couple of reasons behind the deal. I want to try something new. So yeah, I get it. People have different placements of their tom. Nice. Beautiful. Billy Cobham much? Looks like Billy used to have this kit. I didn't believe that he would play a Rockstar Pro, but he must have, because people are calling out Billy a couple times here. On a similar note, I was looking to buy a gigging kit not too long ago, and this was an option. I mean, one up, one down. There's no way I'm lugging all that to play a wedding. True that. Damn, I love this kit. Makes me think of Pittsburgh, I guess. More of like a Pittsburgh Steeler type look. So there you go. That's pretty cool. So the Rockstar, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this was the most popular drum set of the late 80s into the 90s. They sold a ton of these, and they made them in Japan initially, but they switched to Taiwan eventually, and I think eventually they even went to China, their Chinese factory. But let's take a look at this before we look at the post. We do have rounder lugs, so this is a later Rockstar, probably a Taiwan set. And you can tell the hoop is that kind of plasticky rubber material that they use on the Imperial Stars and other sets of this era. So this is hidden by a bunch of ZBT garbage, and it's a mishmash of colors. We've got black, we've got natural, maybe also natural. It's not the prettiest kit, but I'll bet it sounds awesome. 1, 2, 3, 4 toms, 2 snares, or is this a snom over here? I don't know, but you got to upgrade those cymbals. The ZBTs just don't sound good. I'm sorry. So let's take a look. That kids think those are vintage and power toms is a little depressing. I guess that this is being called vintage is sad because it's not. Well, I'm not a kid per se. The toms are hella tall, and everywhere I look, call them power toms. I don't know what they're called because they're too tall to play comfortably mounted on the bass drum. Technically, vintage is anything over 20 euros. Why did you post? To make yourself seem like you know it all. So there's a little bit of that in Reddit, a little bit of ego gnashing, but I get it. The guy's proud of his set. He doesn't want to be trashed. So yeah, I would say that it's probably not all vintage. Some of it looks a little newer than 20 years old, but either way, it's a pretty cool looking kit if you're into that. So more vintage rockstar stuff. All right, here we go. Vintage 1983 Tama Swing Star. Definitely MIJ. These are made in Japan. And I picked this up on Craigslist for 180 bucks about a month ago. Nice score. Took the kit apart and spent a bit of time cleaning up and polishing the kit with foil, soapy water, metal polish for the hardware hoops, and Novus 1, 2, 3 for the wrap, and swapped out the heads for new Evans for and the kick batter, blah, 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 with Rezo heads, and with the intention of flipping it after taking it out to gig last Thursday. I decided to keep it. Sounds amazing and looks great under lighting. Can't believe this was Tama's entry-level kit back in the early 80s. Quality and sound is definitely way better than the entry-level kits of the past 20 to 30 years. Last pick was before the restoration. Let's take a look. So this looks like a 22-inch kit with 10 lugs and a, I don't know, 12 or 13-inch tom and a 16-inch tom, I would guess. This wrap it changes names a couple times, but it's silver metallic, something like that. I had a very similar Royal Star kit to this. It was a little younger, or a little older actually than this, from the early 80s, probably 81 or 79, somewhere in there. But this is the red badge era of Swing Star, so that's kind of a nicer, sought after era of Swing Star stuff, even though, as they said, it was the lower end kit that Tama would make. You can kind of see the Zola coating inside the 16-inch floor tom here. Here it is with lighting. That's pretty sexy looking. Here it is before the restore. Got a big old hole in the center. I don't know about that placement, but our T badge is all messed up. Our Omnisphere is looking good. Yeah, I'd say that this is definitely worth 180 bucks and a little bit of time to clean it up. It's basically their Imperial Star line without some of the bells and whistles, like lower end lugs, lower end hoops. So there you go. That's the Swing Star stuff. It's still great shell material. I believe it's also made of Luan Philippine mahogany. But yeah, let's see what the people are saying. Perfection. What are the sizes? I'm going to guess 12, 16, and 22. Yep, the 12 by 8, 16 by 16, 22 by 14, and cymbals. Sound great. I've done a couple of shows with them already. I believe they were Tama's entry intermediate kit back in the early 80s. However, they share the same shells with the Imperial Stars, which was one of their pro lines, along with the Super Stars. They are of way better quality and sound compared to the entry-level kits of the 90s through current. Yeah, I agree. That's probably true. These are just great drums, and you know, they don't command that big of a premium on the market, but they're highly regarded. Let's take a look at this one. Looking for any info on a vintage Tama snare. So we have a Tama Superstar snare with a made in Japan insignia here. Can't quite see the serial number, but it looks like maybe 8 numbers. So I'm going to guess that this is some sort of Tama Mastercraft Superstar brass shell. Maybe I don't think it's the bell brass, but does look like a Mastercraft throw off and lugs. The finish has been kind of pitted, not terribly, won't affect the sound. But yeah, this looks like a Superstar Mastercraft snare from the 80s. Looks like it could be a bell brass. I strongly recommend that you find out exactly what you have and check prices before you sell. Yeah. Has the look of an old bell brass. I don't agree. I don't think it's a bell brass. I think it's probably some other alloy. Need more details, pics and badges, serial numbers, blah, blah, blah. Check your direct messages. Mail it to me and I'll give you all the information you need. Looks like a bell brass. In that case, it's a very sought after drum worth a small fortune. I have a wood version that's only worth about $600 to $700 for sale. How much? Looks shit. I definitely take it off your hand for 50 pounds. Most likely a bell brass, early 86. The numbers follow the format. 154, blah, blah, blah. Will late 86 follow this? Even keep this even at a sacrifice of your own life. Bro, ain't no way you sold this for 300. I hate that. I didn't shoot my shot, damn. Still have my drum. Still have the drum, my dude. You're still welcome to shoot your shot. Was mostly posting just to ask for some info and make sure I wasn't crazy. Could have sold it for $5K and it'd still be a deal. Tried to help you. So is this an actual bell brass? I think by 86 they were back to a 3mm shell, so it's probably not the super sought after version like the Terminator or anything like that from 1980. But it does look like a Mastercraft bell brass snare. Okay, back to Rockstar land. Let's see here, and then we'll get to this Superstar. So awesome vintage Tama Rockstar I'm selling. Thought you guys might like. What do we got from the pictures? We've got a 10 lug kick with black, looks like piano black. You can tell by the post mount here for the two toms that this is one of the earlier ones, kind of the 89 to, I don't know, kind of mid 90s. And this has what looks to be standard size toms, not power toms. Interesting for the Rockstar kit. Can't tell about the floor tom. Let's see what else we've got. Kind of a similar picture. There we go. Looks like a 16 by 16. And yeah, I would say a 12 and a 13, or maybe a 13 and a 14, but not power tom sizes. Looks like a Rockstar snare too. So cool set. Very Dave Grohl vibes. Let's see what the people are saying. That thing is so clean. What model year, if you don't mind me asking? My first kit was a Swing Star. Came right out when they ended the Rockstar Imperial Star. That doesn't sound right. Yeah, hey buddy, thank you for the compliment. Not sure the year. Inside shells are black throughout. It's really cool. Funny you mentioned Swing Star. I have an 80 Swing Star, also piano black. Tampa. Them big old toms take me back. They are not power toms, folks. These do not appear to be square toms. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. It's hard to tell by these pictures. I used to have this exact kit. Hit my feels just a bit. Nice set. Nice set. You shipped them. Revenge of the 80s. Looks like a nice little kit in great shape. Why get rid of it? Yeah. So that's what you can find here on Reddit. Let's take a look at that Superstar set of aquamarines just below this. Okay, folks, I've always wanted the Superstar in aquamarine. Let's take a look at this thing. This is not a, what I would call a full kit. It does have the floor tom, a single tom, so this is kind of like the jazz setup, but this is not a jazz drum. This is a 24-inch kick and just big old noise-making toms. You can see we've got some hardware, nice T-rods, lugs, everything has been well cared for. Here are the toms. Wait, let's take a look at the inside. I've never seen the inside of the aquamarine birch shells. That's cool. You can see that they tint the inside the same as the outside, so really nice. And you can see the birch wood grain through here, but you don't see it that much in other angles. Kind of interesting. The hoops seem to have faded compared to the regular lacquer, or vice versa. Not sure what happened there. Maybe it's the wrong hoop, but looks like a nice set either way. So let's see what the folks are saying. Ah man, what a great find. I'm a vintage Superstar enthusiast. Aquamarine is a tough finish to come by in nice shape, even new. The colors didn't always match between drums. Looks like that's true. These sound fantastic in the studio. Each time I've tracked with them, the engineer drooled over the 16-inch floor. That is so true. The two Superstar sets that I have had in my life, only one of them had a 16-inch floor tom, and it sounded huge. It sounded bigger than the 18-inch that my Maple Superstars have. So there you go. The kick drum front head totally makes it look like a brand new kit, at least from a distance. Beautiful set, lucky dude, gorgeous, great color. Was the rack tom cut down from a deeper size? Probably not. I think that it looks like the actual standard size of a tom, but I could be wrong. All right, let's take a look at one more post. This is another swing star. You can tell we've got the black swing star with the red badge over here. Looks to be a 20 or 22-inch kick and some kind of small-ish toms with a 14 or 16-inch kick. Let's take a look here. It does appear to be 82, 83-ish. Let's look at the pictures though and see if we can find anything. These lugs, they're pretty pointy. I don't know. We do have the Zola coat, but that does last throughout the 80s into like 85, 86. And that's not going to tell us much here. Okay, so here's our first badge. We don't have an actual serial number on the toms. This is pretty characteristic of this style of set. It would be on the kick, and it doesn't look like we have that badge anywhere. Yeah, it's right here. That appears to have the Made in Japan and the serial number on here, which would tell us what we've got here. But I would say it's like an 83, maybe 82 or 84, somewhere in there with the red badge, 82, 83 with the red badge and lugs. That's when the red badges were produced. So there you go. Pretty straightforward. There's always someone who knows more than me or hopefully you in here giving information, and you can't always count that it's correct. But if someone is confident enough to post a comment in here, typically, you know, they know what they're talking about to a certain extent. So there's a little bit of information on the early 80s Tama Swing Star, the Superstar, little Imperial Star, and we also talked about the Peavey stuff. Before we go, I just want to take one look into a page that I like called Guitar Porn. We don't have to click around too much, but this is mostly just where people come to post drool-worthy pictures, and most of the time it's just a single picture. We've got two Fender guitars here, a Jazzmaster and a Jaguar, and they're just looking sexy. Looks like 91 Made in Japan Aztec Gold Fender custom shop with the lace sensor pickups. Kind of weird Ibanez collection or something like that. Not bad. Hagstrom Viking, flamed black. Cool. Eastman. So these Eastman made in China guitars are getting some really good traction here in the US, and everyone has very high things to say about them. So this is one of those Eastman guitars with a really nice flame top in what looks to be an ES335 shape with a Bigsby. Kind of a cool telly with these G&L style or early Fender style humbuckers. I believe it's like 72 is when Fender had these split humbuckers. Nice, interesting headstock, kind of cool. Here's another telly with more traditional vibes. Looks like a Reverend, however, but all black, tuxedoed out, sexy. More tuxedo business, black with chrome and probably a rosewood fretboard, but hard to tell. Let's see the other picture here. Yeah, the sun is preventing us. Yeah, rosewood. Nice, nice Mexican-made Fender Stratocaster. And the Heritage, this is the company that took over the Kalamazoo factory once Gibson shut it down in the 70s, I believe. The Heritage still uses the same Kalamazoo factory that Gibson used to this day to create Gibson-style instruments. Oh my God. And then we have a Beagle here, President Max. That's right, I like it. New Guitar Day, Paranormal Offset Telly. So Guitar Porn is an easy place to come and lose a few hours just drooling over these sexy ass guitars in all kinds of really nice and unique finishes. Yeah. So, thank you for joining me on this trip down the Reddit rabbit hole. Let me know if you have any topics that you would like me to cover specifically, and I'll dive in and see what we have to say. And if you have any commentary about what you've seen in this video, Let me know. Let's see if there's any Redditors who are incorrect with their responses or have given us false information. Feel free to like and subscribe if you like this content. That always helps me direct my efforts. So thank you, and I hope to see you on the next one.